Good morning, Pokemon trainers, or maybe good afternoon, good evening, as this is a World Cup tournament. My name is Gabby Snyder. I'm joined here by Lou Cromie and the one, the only, the multi-talented Gimli, our official El Gato sponsor of the stream. Lou, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. It's amazing to be casting with you once again, Gabby. It's been a long time since our last adventure behind the desk, and it's lovely to be a tri-cast of Pokemon trainers and technically Pokemon with Gimli here. And it's amazing to be able to cast again another fantastic weekend of action from the World Cup by Victory Road, sponsored by, as mentioned, the amazing Elgato. It's going to be, another weekend of fabulous matches, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm especially excited to get to cast with you again, Lou, and Gimli. I mean, let's be real. I feel like I've been blessed by Gimli's presence on this stream, as our viewers have as well. So thank you, Gimli, for gracing us with your presence, and I hope you get all the scritches you deserve for it, because you are just the cutest cat. But before I get too distracted by watching Gimli and not paying attention to the stream, we have officially entered the group stage of the World Cup tournament. If you've been following along so far, we've had the qualifier rounds, and the teams that have scored the most points in terms of matches won and then games won have moved on to the second stage. And it's in the second stage where we will sort of repeat the same process, have another few rounds of round robin for each of the groups, and determine who moves on to the playoffs.
Well, this is where things for me always get really interesting. At the beginning, it's, the pool stages and all the teams that are involved in the World Cup are participating. And at this point, they've been able to kind of battle it out. We've lost a big chunk of the sort of country pool that were first there. And now it is, like you say, kind of starting it over again. You've got a new, fresh set of matches, some new competitors to face down against. And it's a whole new kind of mind game of, like, for example, when we were doing the pools, there are certain teams you don't necessarily want to face or that you might be nervous to face. And now that you've got to kind of readjust your strategies and mindset going into this, I think this is where the competition really does start to heat up, because you've made it through one stage and that's amazing and your adrenaline's going about that, but you cannot afford to kind of relax at this stage. There's still lots of matches that you need to do, lots of countries you need to beat to keep advancing in this World Cup.
Definitely. Let's take a look at the matches we'll be featuring on stream today. Now, yesterday we had a few rounds featured, but today we'll be featuring 4 rounds. You can see the competitors that we'll be showcasing in order on screen. We'll be starting things off with India versus El Salvador, with Kunal Kanodia versus Ezequiel Cordero. Next will be Joseph Ugarte versus Brian Collins, followed by Chaya Wawa I'm so sorry. Trawicha and Joao Veloso. And then last but not least, Bartosz Ezequiel versus Juan Salerno. And I do apologize for my pronunciation. I feel like I'm getting better every week, but alas, I do not have the worldly language experience that I think one would need in order to do this truly justice.
Well, you did a better job than me, let's be honest. I have a little bit of a cold right now. I'm sorry if I sound a little bit like Gollum over here and start sneezing, so thank you, Gabby, for taking the names for me there.
Of course. So to sort of center in on India versus El Salvador, our first match of the day, they are currently in Group 1 alongside of Thailand and Portugal. Did cross the wires a little bit there as well. And like I mentioned earlier, as we're doing some round robin rounds here, there will be 3 weeks where each country in this one group faces off against each other, and then depending on who wins the number of matches, most number of matches or games, they'll get points, and then the person with the highest points will move on. So India and El Salvador have already played a few games this week that happened off stream. We can take a look at the results now, and it looks like India is currently up 1 game, so 2 games overall to 1 win on El Salvador's side. And I know, similar to some other weeks, we're seeing some pretty standard teams with a couple of unique adjustments. Shout out to that Sableye on Nikhil's team. I'm sure Kiriaku would love that if he were on the mic.
Oh, definitely. That's what I thought of as well. As soon as I saw that Sableye, it's a particular favourite of our fellow commentator Ben Kiriakou here. But very interesting. Still very early doors in this particular group stage here. Like you said, there's only sort of 2-1 status at the moment between these two countries, and it's nice kind of taking a look at the Regielekis that I'm seeing, a personal favourite of my own. But again, those restricteds coming through. You know, you've got the classics, like you've got the Xerneas, the Groudon in there, as well as the Zacian and Kyogre, of course. But the one I really like there is down on Luisa's team on the bottom right with that Palkia, particularly on a team with the Zapdos as well. You know, two of my kind of favourite niche picks. And it's really nice to see kind of the synergy going on there, particularly when you've got Pokemon like Landorus and obviously the Stakataka for that slow mode as well, paired up with that Amoonguss. Always nice to see what kind of speed options these players have gone for.
Yeah, and speaking of speed, I think it's no surprise that so few games have been played out already, because I think the time zone difference between India and El Salvador is probably one of the more extreme ones featured in this tournament. So shout outs to all the players who are playing at odd hours to make these matches work. It's always exciting when you can see, you know, all these different regions from around the world who don't normally meet up until something like a World Championships face off against each other.
Yeah, that's true. It's a commitment to the tournament with those time zones.
It really is. So moving on to our players, Kunal Kanodia will be playing from India, and no stranger to the world stage, having qualified for Worlds in 2019, getting top 64 in Dallas regionals, and running a team that is really a pretty standard variant of Zacian right now, except for I think that Ditto peeking out is a little bit of a surprise.
I was very excited to see the Ditto there, and I love it so much. Obviously, Ditto is one of the most versatile Pokemon that you can ever have on your team, but particularly in a format where you've got that one restricted, you can potentially try and switch in, copy a restricted, and then have two on your team, and that can really swing the momentum of a battle if you're able to do that.
Definitely. And alongside of Pokemon like Zacian, the Tornadus, the Rapid Striker Shifu, I believe, it's really going to have some interesting opportunities to go for those key transforms into your opponent's restricted Pokemon, which if we take a look at our player from El Salvador to see their team, will possibly be a Calyrex Shadow, because Ezequiel is running, again, sort of a standard Calyrex Shadow team, but then you have that Araquanid hanging out there as well. Both these trainers taking a really interesting take on the current, I would say, standard team for their preferred restricteds archetype.
Yeah, we're certainly in for a show, this particular matchup. The Araquanid, I absolutely love here. I mean, it's a spider variant Pokemon, so I would run away in fear, but the one thing I love is kind of the take on the Fire Water Grass core here. You've got obviously the Entei, the Rillaboom, really standard grass type Pokemon, and Rillaboom I think is so good at the moment. Being able to have that priority Grassy Glide is just so versatile, and being able to keep switching off the field with U-turn, then having Fake Out as well. Just a phenomenal Pokemon all round. But having the water type there with the Araquanid I think is going to be really, really interesting. It's going to have to obviously avoid any opposing Rillabooms throughout this tournament, but really going to be interesting to see how that Pokemon's going to deal in this particular matchup.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd like to talk about as we enter team preview to get this game started between these two trainers is the potential on Ezequiel's side of the field for a Trick Room setup. It's definitely probably not the preferred mode of the team, but with Pokemon like Amoonguss and Araquanid, I have to wonder if Nihilego or that Calyrex Shadow are carrying Trick Room, so that when you face off against a team like Kunal's running here with really only Tailwind as a form of speed control, you try and get the surprise Trick Room out onto the field, and then you go for big damage with Araquanid and Liquidation and get those knockouts within the 5 turns to win the set.
No, it's a really good observation with the Trick Room, because when you actually look at the opposing side, you know, Pokemon like Zacian, Pokemon like the Urshifu, they do tend to run very speedy, and particularly as we can see, the Urshifu's got a Twist Scarf on there. That's information that's revealed, and Trick Room could be a really nice utility to put into play. You do still have to obviously watch out for the Ditto that can just work around Trick Room, you know, copying all of those stats, and of course the Rillaboom as well, having that priority Grassy Glide is just going to be able to go speed control. What's speed control? I can still go and do some big damage here, so it's certainly an option, and in a best of 3 you can really switch things up.
Definitely. So we're going to get this game started. This is game 1 of week 1 in group 1 for India versus El Salvador. Best of luck, trainers. I think we're going to be off to an exciting start.
We certainly are. And there's that Rillaboom jumping onto the field, paired up with the Shadow Rider Calyrex. On the opposing side, there is the Tornadus with the Zacian. So certainly some speed control options here from that Tornadus, but you've got to watch out for that Fake Out. It could target either of the Pokemon.
Yeah, Fake Out from that Rillaboom is definitely the #1 threat, as if Ezequiel guesses correctly and flinches, you know, the right Pokemon to disrupt Kunal's strategy, that Calyrex Shadow is going to be free to go for an Astral Barrage for some really big damage. And I think that's why Calyrex Shadow has been so popular as of late. It's one of those Pokemon, especially one of those restricted Pokemon, that you can't ignore. It's naturally very fast. Those Astral Barrages will hit incredibly hard, and even when they're able to find a knockout, Calyrex Shadow will get a special attack boost on top of all of that. So if Ezequiel is able to predict the Fake Out properly, get a knockout on this first turn with the Calyrex Shadow, it's possible that he won't even need to worry about speed control, and that Calyrex Shadow will be able to just stat up and win.
Well, the Fake Out going down into the Tornadus, breaking a potential Focus Sash there, leaving Calyrex free to set up the Substitute. Just going to give itself a little bit of protection, as Zacian does go for the Behemoth Blade. So not going to capitalize by going for something like a Swords Dance here. Instead, just targeting down straight into that Substitute. Love this animation so much, and it will be enough to be able to break it here. So the Substitute not going off. You know, Calyrex is going to be exposed going into that next turn, but would have obviously taken considerably less damage compared to what it would have if that had been a Behemoth Blade straight into the Calyrex.
And gives a Calyrex the ability to stall through any plays that Kunal would make to stall out the Fake Out, or otherwise, you know, avoid the flinch and the damage combination. It's unfortunate for Ezequiel that the substitute on the Calyrex didn't stick, but the fact that Calyrex is able to attack essentially unharmed this turn is honestly, I think, a trade-off enough. Kunal does have the opportunity to set up Tailwind this turn finally without having to worry about being flinched by that Rillaboom, at which point the Zacian should be faster and be able to go for a Behemoth Blade. So it looks like Ezequiel again is just playing this very cautious to start. No speed control.
Yep, no speed control. Protect coming up from that Calyrex, and the Behemoth Blade actually going down into the opposing Rillaboom. Not enough to be able to pick up a 1 KO against it, but predicting the Protect there on that Calyrex with the double up with the Air Slash, does find its mark on the Rillaboom and picks up the KO straight away. Really nice play there from Kunal, really identifying the Protect on the Calyrex and doubling down into that Rillaboom. No need to go for that Tailwind turn and burn a turn early. You're just able to pick up a solid KO there. Really nice play from Kunal.
Yeah, I think Kunal was trying to ensure that the Calyrex's support options weren't going to be on the field. So by targeting that Rillaboom, you're essentially saying, I know my opponent's trying to protect their Calyrex Shadow because it's such a critical Pokemon, especially knowing that there was also the Amoonguss in the back. Ezequiel's strategy is really going to be built around supporting this Calyrex Shadow. Does have the ability to Rage Powder this turn to protect it, but unless Calyrex Shadow is able to start dealing damage unthreatened by Kunal, I think Ezequiel is going to find himself backed into a corner with only 2 Pokemon left.
Yeah, well, Amoonguss, another great support Pokemon for that Calyrex, does go in for that Rage Powder indeed, so he's going to have to take this Behemoth Blade. Does huge damage, again, not finding the one-hit KO, but deals a significant chunk to that Amoonguss, while taking a little bit of Rocky Helmet recoil. The Astral Barrage, however, going to be able to obviously target both the opposing Pokemon on Kunal's side of the field, will be enough to take the Tornadus out of this battle, but it did get that cheeky Tailwind up now, so Kunal does have the speed advantage, which is going to be optimal considering that Calyrex has now got the Grim Nade boost as well.
I don't think I've seen Rocky Helmet on Amoonguss in a very long time, so shout out to Ezequiel for that tech. I think it's a really great item for Amoonguss to hold, especially if it has that regenerator ability that you can unlock via the ability capsule. You're able to switch Amoonguss back and forth and get your health back, and honestly, Rocky Helmet is going to be doing more damage, I think, to Pokemon when Amoonguss takes physical damage than Amoonguss would be able to deal back with like a Pollen Puff or maybe a Giga Drain or a Sludge Bomb. So just a nice way to sort of chip down damage and put Pokemon like Zacian within knockout range from something like a Astral Barrage from the Calyrex. Also keeps the also keeping Calyrex safe with the Rage Powder as well is just really great synergy here. Unfortunately, Amoonguss is in a position where it will be doubled into this turn by both the Zacian and the Urshifu should it decide to go for another Rage Powder. So I think Ezequiel Ezequiel has to be careful here. I think that, again, if the Calyrex Shadow can find enough time to stall out the Tailwind, become the fastest Pokemon on the field again, now that it has a single special attack boost from the Grimnay ability, it should be able to pick up a KO on Zacian and this Urshifu once Focus Sash is broken. I thought it was Choice Scarf actually, since we saw in Team Preview. So the switch there, it's unfortunate that the Shadow Calyrex is giving up that attack boost, but Araquanid is really better suited to deal damage at this point.
Yeah, and Kunal really in the driving seat with the speed advantage here. Urshifu going for the surging strikes, and even if that has got into the Amoonguss with the Unseen Fist ability, it's going to be able to find its mark. And you can see, even with the critical hits, not dealing too much, is going to be Rocky Helmet damaged here, but it only takes 2 as opposed to 3 deals of that Rocky Helmet, which I think Urshifu is going to be very happy about. And Ezequiel going for the switch as well, sacrificing the Grimnay boost to try and burn through these Tailwind turns to give the Calyrex the advantage going forward. Behemoth Blade going to come out from that Zacian, however, onto the Araquanid that's joined the field. And Araquanid going to be able to take that really well as well. Still looks like it's going to be a 2-hit. However, with that grassy terrain, it could put the Araquanid into a little bit of a safer position at this stage. However, with the item choice on the Urshifu, if Ezequiel's bringing back in that Calyrex, it's going to have to worry about taking one of those surging strikes.
It is, and I don't think Ezequiel has any indication at this point that the Urshifu is holding that Choice Scarf item, so we might see him go for a Protect on Calyrex and Araquanid this turn to stall out that last turn of Tailwind. I'm not sure if Araquanid is really in a position where it can deal any damage in this game at this point. You know, it's such a slow Pokemon. We saw it take just around half damage from the Behemoth Blade. That could have been a roll, so it's possibly threatening a knockout this turn as well. So you really have to slow things down and try and position yourself to get a liquidation. But it looks like Ezequiel is going on the offensive, so we'll see if that Araquanid gets an opening to attack.
Yeah, no defensive measures there with any protects, as the surging strikes will go down into that Calyrex. 1, 2, is the third one going to be enough to pick up the KO? It does indeed. Obviously, 3 critical hits apiece. Ezequiel does lose the restricted Pokemon in this occasion, with the Araquanid sitting, very vulnerable to one of Zacian's attacks. Is going to go for the play rough and pick up the KO against that Araquanid. So again, just such an offensive pressure coming out here, and is able to take the game. Well done to Zacian there, cleaning it up.
Yeah, and the play rough on the Zacian is also a pretty new adaptation. I think over the past couple of weeks, we've seen Zacian moving more away from substitute as that third move and then running play rough for coverage. Given that not a lot of Pokemon have access, are choosing to bring, I should say, Will-O-Wisp at this point in time in the metagame, you can make that choice. And with situations when you're facing off against Pokemon like Araquanid, you now have a fairy type move, which is able to at least hit Araquanid for neutral damage. Behemoth Blade was resisted, which is why we saw it do considerably less. So very well played from Kunal. It felt like he just had the offensive pressure on his side of the field throughout that game fairly comfortably. That Tailwind really helped. So going into game 2, I'm curious if Ezequiel is going to maybe consider trying to slow things down a little bit. There is that question of, is there a Trick Room option on maybe the Calyrex Shadow, something like Substitute Protect, Astral Barrage, Trick Room. It's not like a set that has the best coverage, but it would give that Araquanid a purpose on that team. The alternative could have been maybe Araquanid being there for the Incineroar, which it looks like Kunal is making an adjustment to bring.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the other nice thing for the Zacian is there's no Intimidate user on Ezequiel's side of the field. So getting that Intrepid Sword boost, that's going to be there to stay. And I think in a lot of other matchups, having that kind of rotating Intimidate user coming in the form of Incineroar, for example, does put Zacian in a little bit more of a predicament. But as you can see from that game 1, Zacian was just able to go for big damage after big damage and was left relatively unchecked on the field. So I think Ezequiel needs to find a way to be able to put that Pokemon in check a little stronger. Leading out with a nice adjustment here, we've got the Entei and the Rillaboom coming out into the fray with Urshifu and Incineroar on the opposing side.
So it looks like Kunal and Ezequiel made adjustments going into this game too, and interestingly enough, their adjustments are sort of checking each other in just the perfect amount. The Incineroar brings fake out pressure, but the Rillaboom's faster and also has access to fake out. The Urshifu can go for a surging strike into the Entei, but the Entei can also, depending on if it's Choice Scarf or not, outspeed and possibly burn the Urshifu with a Sacred Fire if Ezequiel's feeling a little bit lucky today. So The thing that I want to pay attention to in this turn is which trainer feels the pressure to adjust. I think if we see both these trainers, switch out a Pokemon, there won't necessarily be a cost to it. But if Kunal does lock into a switch, as we saw him just consider, and Ezequiel decides to double into, let's say, the Tornadus with the Focus Sash switching in, that could give Ezequiel a huge advantage at the start of this game, given that it was really the Tailwind that gave Kunal the momentum he needed to power through game one.
Well, the fake out once again goes down into that slot and actually catches the Tornadus, breaking the Focus Sash nice and early here, as Tornadus is actually able to avoid the Sacred Fire. So has its Focus Sash broken, but avoids Sacred Fire. It's a little bit of swings and roundabouts there, as the Incineroar does go for the parting shot into the opposing Rillaboom. So Kunal making some really nice ball position changes here. Tornadus obviously joining the fray, and now with that parting shot is able to keep that Intimidate Incineroar for a little bit later on in the match, bringing that Urshifu back onto the field.
And really, Tornadus doesn't need that Focus Sash against this lead. If Kunal decides he wants to get Tailwind out, he can go ahead and use it this turn and not have to worry about, being knocked out prior to that attack connecting. If he decides he wants to save it for later, he can switch in that Incineroar, and all things considered, Incineroar should have a fine switch in. Entei switching out here, though, is a good confirmation, I think, that Kunal should be considering a Focus Sash on that Entei as well.
Yeah, and the Entei doesn't want to take any surging strikes, so switches out for the Amoonguss that would have been able to take those much better, but the Urshifu actually going straight for the U-turn does a huge amount of damage to that opposing Rillaboom, and if this is doubled up with that Air Slash once again, this could very well be picking up the KO. I love the pivoting here from Kunal, not going for the obvious surging strikes here, and brings in that Incineroar to be able to intimidate once again and apply fake out pressure for Kunal going into this next turn with the Amoonguss on the field. I think it's very, very nice. But Rillaboom does avoid the Air Slash here, meaning Rillaboom's able to go for a U-turn of its very own. Does minimal damage, of course, to that Incineroar, but it allows Ezequiel the opportunity to pivot, possibly bring in a Pokemon that's going to benefit from having Amoonguss as its sidekick here.
And if you think back to game one, there's only one Pokemon that is going to be that Calyrex Shadow. But, we're in a much different position here in game one, or game two, than we were in game one. Kunal knows all of the Pokemon on Ezequiel's side of the field that he's brought for this game. And I think more importantly, Kunal is in a position where he can go for some attacks against this Calyrex and not have to worry too much about the Astral Barrages starting to add up. The Tornadus is certainly in danger from a knockout this turn, but with the Incineroar on the field and with the Incineroar having access to a dark type attacking move, Calyrex has to be very careful.
Yeah, no fake out here. It's going to be the Astral Barrage coming out, though, targeting down into both of Kunal's Pokemon. It's not enough to pick up the KO against that Tornadus, though, so it will be able to hang on, maybe Air Slash another day, as Incineroar does go for the Throat Chop. There was no Rage Powder coming out, so Calyrex was left exposed and will be KO'd from the Dark-type move on the Incineroar. It's nice to see the Dark-type moves coming back onto Incineroar. They definitely disappeared for a while. And the Safety Goggles, Incineroar, the start of this turn, not going to be thwarted by the Spore coming out from that Amoonguss as well. Now, Amoonguss sitting very vulnerable here to a potential Air Slash and Fire-type move coming out from that Incineroar, but it does give Ezequiel the opportunity to bring in Rillaboom from the back and just have that fake-out pressure to maybe help out Amoonguss a little bit.
Yeah, a great adjustment in between games 1 and 2 for Kunal, bringing the Incineroar, especially knowing it has safety goggles. I mean, that means this Incineroar can comfortably sit in front of Amoonguss, doesn't have to worry necessarily about Rage Powder, doesn't have to worry about Spore. It can just do what it needs to do to connect the Throat Chops, connect the Flare Blitzes, and deal a bunch of damage. Ezequiel could still possibly win this game, but I think it's going to come down to what exactly this Entei has access to moves-wise. I know sometimes Entei will run moves like Stone Edge or maybe a ground type attack to deal super effective damage to the Incineroar, but if Ezequiel's not able to remove it from the field fairly quickly and keep that Entei around for when the Zacian makes an appearance, because that's also lurking in the back of Kunal's party somewhere, I think it'll be pretty easy for Kunal to clean up and win this game 2-0. So Ezequiel's not quite out of it yet, but this Entei is so key to his strategy. He needs to find a way to keep it safe but also get the damage down on the field that he needs.
Exactly, and if you're Kunal as well, you've got your Urshifu in the back that can apply a lot of pressure to that opposing Entei as well. You can just go for those surging strikes, deal some big damage. Entei is going to go for the Sacred Fire. It's targeting down into that Incineroar. Does a little bit of damage here. Would have been a nice catch on a potential switch, as Incineroar does go for the Flare Blitz, however, so trying to remove this pesky mushroom from the field. Not quite able to do so, living on a slither of health there for that Amoonguss. To take Rocky Helmet recoil. It survives though, despite taking all the types of recoil in that particular turn, and Tornadus wisely protecting itself from the Amoonguss. But I mean, what a survive by that Incineroar. It's definitely bold and brave out here in this game too, Gabby.
I was going to say that would have been insane if that Rocky Helmet damage was enough to pick up the KO plus the recoil. But fortunately for Kunal, that Incineroar lives to see another turn, and I think more importantly can come back out onto the field to intimidate that Entei. Could, connect an attack with Entei or a parting shot possibly if Kunal decides. I think this Tornadus is in a position where you just go for a air slash into the Amoonguss, hope it connects, and you hope you get that knockout. And even though Entei does have the option to connect Sacred Fire with one of these two Pokemon, you have to wonder what Ezequiel's going to be prioritizing, or if he's going to predict another possible switch.
Well, I think it's quite wise of this Amoonguss to go for the Protect. Does manage to obviously not take any damage from the air slash that way, but Tornadus will be KO'd here by the Sacred Fire. But I think kind of done its job, and like you said, it gives Kunal the opportunity now to bring in a Pokemon from the back. And the one thing I love about this parting shot is obviously it's going to be reducing those offensive stats on the Entei, but it gives Kunal all the opportunities now about what Pokemon he wants to be bringing in here. Is it going to be Urshifu and Zacian? Do you maybe want to bring the Incineroar back in for the KO Tornadus? It really does give him all the flexibility going into kind of the end game of this game too.
One thing he does have to be mindful of is the fact that both Urshifu and Zacian will be moving faster than the Incineroar, barring something like a Fake Out. So Amoonguss would have the opportunity to redirect one attack if it decides to go for that. If Incineroar goes for Fake Out onto Amoonguss to stop the Rage Powder, then I'm pretty sure Rocky Helmet will actually pick up the KO this time. It's gonna be close, but if I did my mental math correctly in between previous recoil turns, I think that would be enough to pick up that KO. So you just have to be careful. I don't think it's necessarily going to win or lose this game for Kunal. It feels like he's in a very comfortable position. The only Pokemon left in the back of Ezequiel's party is going to be that Rillaboom, which is something that Zacian can handle very easily. So as long as you get that Entei off the field prior to Zacian making an appearance, or possibly get a couple more Intimidates or Parting Shots down, just so that Entei really won't be doing much damage with that Sacred Fire, I think that Kunal is still going to be in a comfortable spot. I guess the only other thing you have to watch out for is any surprise burns, because Sacred Fire does have a 50% chance of burning the target Pokemon when it connects with an attack, and I think that's what Ezequiel is kind of needs to start hoping for at this point if he wants to find his way out into a game 3.
Yeah, it really is a coin flip on those Sacred Fire burns, but not going to be in this particular turn, as Rillaboom does rejoin the field, sets up that grassy terrain as well. It's going to be the Incineroar going for that Fake Out down into the Amoonguss. Of course, was going to Fake Out potential Inner Focus Entei, and like you said there, Gabby, Rocky Helmet claims its victim in this match. Incineroar will be returning to its Pokeball, leaving Urshifu free to go for these Surging Strikes. Now, this has been a really nice switch in here from Ezequiel, because Rillaboom's going to be able to take these much better than the Entei would have done, but of course constantly chipping away is just going to make this Rillaboom even easier work for the Zacian in the back, and of course with the Choice Scarf on the Urshifu as well, it can apply a lot of pressure to something like the Amoonguss. But this is where Rillaboom does start to come into the fray a little bit, because something like a Priority Grassy Glide is going to really cause trouble for that Urshifu.
Or even just something as simple as a Fake Out will cause trouble for both these Pokemon. By switching the Entei out there, Ezequiel was able to remove those Intimidates, reset the move choice so that Entei can pick another move if it is indeed a Choice Scarf Entei, and really, I think, take back board control at this point in time. Kunal has to double into the Amoonguss here so that he doesn't have to worry about Spore or Rage Powder. The Amoonguss also could protect, which would be really unfortunate with the double there if the Surging Strikes isn't enough to pick up the knockout from this range. And then once Entei comes out on the field, if Kunal is able to secure the two-hit or the double knockout this turn, thanks to Surging Strikes plus Behemoth Blade, then redirecting into the Rillaboom, I think he should be okay, but he's gonna have to take a Grassy Glide from the Rillaboom onto that Urshifu prior, and that's gonna deal a lot of damage.
Ooh, does a lot, but not enough to pick up the KO against it. So Urshifu is free to go for these surging strikes once again. Going to be finding its mark down across onto the Amoonguss here. Just going to be able to remove it from play.
Oh,
Doesn't have to worry about any kind of spores. But actually, it's not, because Rocky Helmet does it again.
Yeah, that Rocky Helmet is doing so much work for Amoonguss right now. That's 2 key knockouts.
Absolutely love that from the Rocky Helmet, and for its troubles, Amoonguss will now be thwarted from the Behemoth Blade, and Zacian isn't going to mind taking a little Rocky Helmet damage there. As we've said before, I think you mentioned Zacian's going to be really sort of easy pickings to take down this opposing Rillaboom, but of course with Entei coming back into the fray here, if it is Choice Scarf going for something like a Sacred Fire, that's something that Zacian doesn't want to take either, particularly if it's paired up with something like that Grassy Glide just to get that extra damage onto the Zacian here.
Sacred Fire is not the most accurate move, though, so Kunal does have the opportunity to try and dodge it. I think the big question is not so much, well, obviously how much damage is it going to do, but I think more importantly, will it be able to secure the burn? Because I think once Zacian is burned, there's just no way it's going to be able to deal enough damage to this Entei. But interesting thing to note, that Entei also has access to Flare Blitz, which is a very accurate move. Does come with the downside of taking recoil damage, but I think you are absolutely right, Lou. The combination of Grassy Glide and Flare Blitz from Entei should be enough to take this Zacian down and bring us into game 3.
Yeah, Flare Blitz does huge amounts of damage, and even with Entei taking some recoil from it, you know, it's not going to worry too much. Zacian only has single type moves, and it's KO'd anyway. Rillaboom doesn't even have to do anything. It can just sit there, you know, having its little dance party and just enjoying the fact that the score is equal. We are indeed going to a game 3, Gabby.
Yeah, and I love how Ezequiel played that game too. You know, I think it was very tempting to say, oh, without that Calyrex Shadow, he's really going to struggle to deal damage. But the Amoonguss was able to just pick up so much pressure with that Rocky Helmet. And I don't think Kunal was really too careful about the targeting. Maybe you don't target the Amoonguss with your Urshifu this time around, knowing that you're going to be taking more damage for your trouble than you're actually dealing. That certainly would have turned things around a little bit, but still, Grassy Glide was there, the Entei with the Choice Scarf was there, and on top of all that, we also got confirmation that Entei has Flare Blitz. So, you know, even though the Calyrex Shadow is sort of that major threat of this team, Ezequiel has shown us that, you know, all you need is sometimes just a Entei and a Rillaboom and an Amoonguss, and as long as you're able to keep your board positions healthy and, you know, switch around when you need to drop those intimidates, you can still put up a heck of a fight.
I mean, this is the thing, the Kunal's got to really work around that opposing Entei, because obviously with Inner Focus, the Intimidates aren't really going to bother it at all. So you need to find a way to be able to kind of put it in check. And I think the Urshifu is going to be the Pokemon to really do that. But then at the same time, you have to worry about the Rillaboom. And you've got this kind of constant sort of battle between these Pokemon types and who's going to be the faster, who has the advantage, particularly when Entei's got the Choice Scarf and Rillaboom having priority Grassy Glide. It makes things very difficult to work around.
Yeah, and the fact that all of the Johto legendary trio got access to Inner Focus this generation easily has just been something that's absolutely mind-blowing. Like, honestly, I think I still assume that it has pressure sometimes, because I've just been used to these Pokemon just not being able to do as much as you want them to do. But here we are in Series 10, and as Ezequiel is showing us, you know, this Entei is such a comfortable Pokemon to play in a Zacian matchup, as it's a return to game 1 leads for, I think, both these trainers.
Yeah, really nice to see these jumping out into the fray. Ezequiel has got the Shadow Calyrex with the Rillaboom, where it is Urshifu and Tornadus for Kunal's side of the field. So once again, fake out potential from that Rillaboom and speed control options from the Tornadus.
But now that we're in game 3, we have a lot more information down onto the board than we had previously. The Rillaboom could go for another fake out, but the Tornadus has revealed Protect. The Tornadus could protect, could switch, could just set up a Tailwind and then give Urshifu, you know, the double speed advantage with this Choice Scarf and the Tailwind stacked together. We could see Ezequiel just immediately pivot that Calyrex Shadow out off of the field to get in something like the Amoonguss to stop out that Urshifu again. There's way more of a mind game going on this turn, and I think if I were in Ezequiel's shoes, given how early he lost Calyrex Shadow in game 2 and how he was able to still turn it around, I think you just make that switch anyways. You get the Amoonguss out onto the field, you get that Rocky Helmet pressure back into the field, and then maybe if Calyrex Shadow is your last Pokemon standing, those Astral Barrages are going to find their knockouts so much easier.
Kunal taking every second in that turn 0, almost running out of time to lock in the switch forward, that Intimidate using Incineroar just to apply some pressure to that Rillaboom, leaving the Tornadus unchecked. No Fake Out here to go for that Tailwind. However, the Astral Barrage is going to come out first of all, target down into both Pokemon. Tornadus obviously able to survive this. We've seen that happen in, I believe it was game 1, and Incineroar not going to worry about that at all. But it isn't going to appreciate taking this U-turn, going to give it a little bit more chip damage and giving Ezequiel the opportunity to keep switching in Pokemon, being able to readjust the ball position in light of the fact that there's a Tailwind on the field here, and you want to preserve your Calyrex. So bringing in something like the Entei here, a Pokemon that's not going to worry too much about taking either fire type moves or dark type moves really from the opposing Incineroar, and can apply some good pressure to something like the Tornadus. I think some nice switch in here.
It's definitely a nice switch in, but I think Ezequiel needs to target damage on that Incineroar if he wants to keep this game moving along. The one danger about this Incineroar is that it does have access to Throat Chop and Flare Blitz, and it is right now most likely faster than the Calyrex thanks to the Tailwind. I think we saw that earlier in a game, and if the Throat Chop is able to connect onto the Calyrex, we know that's going to be a knockout. So you have to be very careful here. Entei could have some move to hit the Incineroar super effectively. It has taken a lot of damage, so it's possible that would be enough. We'll have to see.
Well, Calyrex avoiding the air slash here. The Stomping Tantrum, a great answer to that Incineroar. Not enough to be able to pick up the KO against it, as Calyrex does go for the Astral Barrage, and I think this double up will be enough to remove that Incineroar from play. There we see a double KO actually for that Calyrex. These Grenade boosts are going to look lovely for Ezequiel.
They really are, and that kind of adjustment was exactly what Ezequiel needed from that turn. It's unfortunate that the air slash missed. The air slash could have also possibly flinched that Calyrex, but I don't think it would have done enough damage to knock the Calyrex out, and as a result, I think the Calyrex would still be looking at 2 knockouts that turn. That all being said, you know, Kunal, even though he can't really switch around anymore, the Entei is locked into Stomping Tantrum, and the Urshifu and the Zacian will have the opportunity as a result to sort of attack whichever slot they would like. I think that Ezequiel has to consider switching in that Rillaboom for the Calyrex and giving up those boosts, knowing that, again, it's really, you have a couple of turns to get that chip damage down onto these 2 Pokemon, and it's at that point in time you'll be able to pick up those KOs with Calyrex. I don't think you go for it this turn, unless you're feeling very confident about how much damage this Stomping Tantrum is going to do to Zacian, and that fact that Urshifu will most likely target the Entei. If Ezequiel goes for an attack with Calyrex, I think that is the prediction that he makes.
Yeah, I mean, the Entei here, that Stomping Tantrum is something that Zacian really doesn't want to take, but the Surging Strikes is relatively obvious here, and I think it's wise here from Ezequiel to go for the switch, particularly when you've got Grass-type Pokemon on your team that are going to want to take those Water-type moves much more. Actually, a double switch. It's going to be the Rillaboom coming into the fray for that Calyrex, so both Pokemon that are going to be able to apply pressure to that opposing Urshifu and just protect the Entei going into these later stages of the game, particularly with the Choice Scarf. Once the Tailwind ends, that Flare Blitz is going to hit very, very hard, and once again we see the Rocky Helmet come into effect here, actually dealing more damage than the Surging Strike is dealing to that opposing Amoonguss here. So very unfortunate for the Urshifu chipping away at that Amoonguss. I think really it's going to be the Zacian that's going to be dealing damage in this particular turn with that Behemoth Blade. Wondering who the target's going to be, however. Is it going to double up into this Amoonguss? Yes, it is. And this is nice to just, you know, remove that Amoonguss from the fray. It doesn't want to go for any Rage Powders and draw in any of those single type attacks, single target attacks, or also go for any spores here. So Rillaboom, with that priority though, still going to be able to apply good pressure to that Urshifu, and we know that Urshifu with the Scarf cannot protect.
Exactly. All Ezequiel has to do to knock out Urshifu is Grassy Glide into that spot, and then it'll be Zacian versus Rillaboom Entei and Calyrex Shadow, which is going to be a bit of a tall ask. If this, if somehow Kunal would be able to find a way for this Urshifu to attack this turn and connect with Surging Strikes with Entei, I mean, he certainly has the opportunity, as it is Entei who comes out onto the field for Ezequiel this turn. You know, there definitely is a chance, but I don't think Urshifu can survive a Grassy Glide at this low of a health, and as a result, it's gonna come down to Flare Blitz or Sacred Fire and how much damage they do and whether or not they connect.
Well, Zacian actually going to go for the close combat here into the Entei, and it is not enough to be able to pick up the KO. I mean, with something like a powerful Flare Blitz, Entei is at risk of KOing itself, but particularly with the sort of defense drops, this Flare Blitz is going to really hurt the Zacian and picks up the clean KO against it. So Ezequiel able to clean up this match, and I think Entei really was the superhero of this one for me.
It really was, and I mean, this goes to show you how powerful Inner Focus Entei is. I talked about it a little bit in between games. I'll talk about it more now. I think Series 10 has fallen into this really interesting format where Entei is very uniquely suited to do fantastic amounts of damage to the popular restricted Pokemon. You do have to worry about Kyogre, obviously. That's not really going to be a winning situation anytime soon. But against all the other restricted Pokemon, it feels like Entei has a chance, and that is thanks to the fact that it doesn't have to worry about being flinched. If you give it a Choice Scarf, it can move fast, and Sacred Fire always will threaten to burn those physical attackers. So very well played by Ezequiel there. Very well played Entei, and I also really love the use of Choice Scarf on both these trainers' teams. I think Choice Scarf is sort of the other new hotness, if you will, of Series 10 that's going on right now, and it's always interesting to see where it is on people's teams because you know someone's going to be bringing it.
Yeah, it's a really good item to have, and I want to touch on a little more about what you said about Inner Focus, because in this kind of format where we don't have Dynamax, you know, having Fake Out has really found its way back into the fray, and it's almost become like a staple to have one or possibly even two Fake Out users on your team, and having that Inner Focus, we've seen it with Mienshao as well. It's kind of come into the fray a little bit more, and the Entei as well, finding that ability now makes it a really great Pokemon choice in this particular meta, that it just is one of those abilities that is really, really strong. A little bit how we say Intimidate's one of the choices that you need to have on your team. Well, possibly a way to counteract that is with Inner Focus as well. So I think it's interesting how, particularly in this current format, it's really starting to come to the fold.
Yeah, honestly, I think what I want to do in between games here, since I believe I'll be jumping off the mic for the next round, is go back to the Entei I brought to Worlds in 2015 and go get it the ability capsule that it deserves, because it's just such a good Pokemon right now. So congratulations to Ezequiel. Very well played, Kunal. That was such an exciting match. We'll be back with more Pokemon action soon, so stay tuned, everybody.